Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Let's do another endless war update today. So where are we? We're in April of 2024. We got a war going on between Russia and Ukraine, which the United States is financing, and we got a war going on between Israel and Hamas, which again the United States is financing. So what's going on here? Okay, so basically war business. Okay, this is the business of war. Um, I think that there's nothing that the Pentagon would hate more. Okay, not just the Pentagon, but the war industry would hate more than worldwide peace. Okay, now I'm coming at this from the perspective of like I'm 52 years old now. I think up until the point I was like maybe 48. I mean, I supported and I believed in every war that the United States ever fought, including the Vietnam War. Okay, because the Vietnam War was a war against socialism, communism, right? So I was a big supporter of that. Even though that was like, I was still a baby when that was going on. Later on as I studied it, completely supported it. I supported the Gulf Wars, war on terrorism, everything. Okay, I supported it all. But one of the things that I have figured out is, regardless of whether these wars were for a good cause or not, um, the net result is that they gave power to people here in the United States that should not have power. Okay, they created a more powerful, overbearing government, and that's why all these wars, World War One, World War Two, bad wars, all of them bad, and it doesn't matter if they were, even if like you believe, right, or you conclude that these wars were to stop evil. Yeah, they stopped. Maybe they stopped evil someplace else around the world, but they created evil here in the United States. Okay, an evil that basically suppresses the individual rights of people. Okay, so ever since I think World War One, um, I think the way it looks to me, right, looking back, is that this country has been like continuously run, okay, or heavily influenced by the U.S. military-industrial complex. Okay, so all these companies that build the bombs and the tanks and the war machines. Okay, all these companies, right? They've got their hooks like at all levels of society, starting with the politicians. Okay, but more than just the politicians, but also the people that they employ, that basically make more money when there's a war going on. Okay, the U.S. military-industrial complex has their hooks in at all levels of our society. Okay, and this is turning into like more and more of a worldwide thing. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I think we're going to continually have wars until the military business is basically destroyed. Okay, we're going to continually have wars. People that make money off of war are never gonna want to stop war. Okay, I mean that's just. I mean, if you think about it, that makes sense. Okay, so um, I think there was like a huge boost that came after September 11th, right? I mean, I think that kind of moved things up to like a completely different level. We got things like the Unpatriot Act, where basically they could like wiretap, and you could have these FISA warrants. So I mean, I think the country basically went like to hell after September 11th. Um, you know, like people were like saying back then that the U.S. government was behind it, and I didn't believe it, and I don't necessarily know if that's the case. But uh, if if the U.S. government, if all these bureaucracies had any idea of how much power they would have gotten as a result of the September 11th attack. If they had like that, like a one of those round fortune telling bowls, right? And they could see how much power they would get as a result of the September 11th attack. They would have definitely planned them, okay? Because the bureaucracies benefited from that. Okay, so these wars in Ukraine, also in the Middle East, what's going on? Big business, okay? And here's the thing: the military-industrial complex, they don't want victory, right? Because victory means an end to their business, okay? They want continuous war. So if we look at these situations, right, Ukraine, Israel, it looks almost like a stalemate, okay? And that is perfect. That is perfect for what they want. They want a continuous stalemate with both sides fighting each other indefinitely. If you go back to World War I, that trench warfare that they had, where neither side could overtake the other side, I mean, that was like the perfect war, okay, for war business, where they just continually fighting each other, not moving an inch one way or the other, okay? That's perfect. So the current stalemate is perfect for the war business, okay? So the other thing that's happening is they're testing weapons, okay? These wars, especially the one in Ukraine, I mean, it is the perfect opportunity to test new weapons. I think that they kind of got bored with the war in Afghanistan, and in retrospect, I think that's the reason why they rushed out of Afghanistan, because they're like, ooh, there's this new war that's brewing over here in Ukraine, or the possibility of this war, and that's going to be a lot more interesting, because in Afghanistan, the war had pretty much gotten to the point where all they were doing was just you were having one side shoot at the other side, all the important things that could be blown up, with expensive missiles, they had already been blown up. So there was nothing to blow up with expensive weapon systems, right? But the possibility of this war in Ukraine is oh wow, there's lots of expensive stuff that we can blow up over there and test out these expensive weapon systems. So I think that's the reason why Biden rushed the United States out of Afghanistan, because there was a more exciting war brewing over in Ukraine. Okay, so yeah, they wanted to test the weapons, test the soldiers, right? See how the soldiers will handle these new weapon systems. How quickly can they train people, right? Or an army that has zero experience on some of these weapon systems, how quickly they can train them up. Okay, test the populations, right? How gullible are the populations? How easy is it to get them to support this pointless war? Okay, because I think in Ukraine they were kind of dealing almost with a virgin population. Okay, they really hadn't been involved in the wars on terrorism. There wasn't any recent conflicts in that area. So this is a virgin population that they were able to kind of test out and see how they react and how quickly they acclimate to this war, and how the country basically their industries, their different businesses, because in areas of the country where there isn't where they're not in the middle of a battle, I mean, the people there are still working, right? So how is the population in areas that that aren't actively involved in the conflict? How are they how are they adapting? Okay, so they're testing and studying the population over there. Okay, and the interesting thing to them is this is if you look at Ukraine, this is almost a it's Russian, but it's also European. It's kind of in the middle, somewhere between. It's on the edge of Eastern Europe, but the people there are very, to some extent, are European-like. So it's this is probably a good sample population to kind of judge, to look at and see, okay, how would the people in other parts of Europe or United States, how would they react to a war? Okay, so that's a good population for them to test. Okay. Now, the other thing that's happening here is that aside from the U.S. military-industrial complex being behind this and seeing this as a testing, I think that the Soviet or Russians, no longer Soviets, the Russians are like 100% on board with this, okay? Because I mean there was a limited number, I think, of conflicts in Syria where, let's say, the Russians were involved, and the reports were that they were not that effective. And I think that one of the things that the Russians figured out, and were probably, pointed, probably the American military-industrial complex pointed out to them, right? Because at the high levels, they talk to each other, okay? One of the things that they probably pointed out to the Russians is, wow, look how bad you guys did in Syria. The reason for that is because you guys don't have enough experience in war, okay? So look at us here in the United States, right? We've been continually fighting wars like since World War One, basically, okay? So we're good at it, okay? So if you guys in Russia, if you want to be good at war, you need to practice it, right, with live fire, right, in a controlled, realistic type of context. So they probably like floated this idea, like one way or another, that hey, this situation in Ukraine is like the perfect testing ground for you guys. Okay, send your soldiers over there, fight this controlled war, and see, test your weapons, test your people, test everything out. And I think the Russians got like 100% on board with this. Like, you know what? You're right. We are at a disadvantage war-wise because we haven't been fighting these continual wars like you guys have. So, I mean, we need to practice. So, I mean, I think they basically came to a backdoor agreement that, okay, so this is the area that we're going to play in. This is the limit of the weapons, like no nukes, right? We're going to keep it confined to this area. And let's practice, okay? So that's what we got going on right now in Ukraine, okay? We got a practice war going on with people getting killed for real, okay? So it's like one of those, like, I never even watched the ove, but it's kind of sounds like almost like one of these Hunger Game type of things, right? I didn't watch the movie, but I heard I've been told the idea behind that movie. So it seems like they created this area, they carved out this area in Ukraine and said, okay, this is going to be the area we're going to have these war games. Let's test the people out, let's test the weapons. Okay. So the other thing that's happening here, and again, this has been escalating, right? And it got a big boost in 2001. Military budget dependence. Okay. So across the United States, okay. Lots of people, right, individuals, lots of companies are dependent on the military budget, okay? So lots of people benefit from the wars, okay? So I think that that's one of the things that they're also trying to create in Russia as well, okay? This situation in Ukraine is kind of doing the same thing over there, right, and intentionally, right? It's growing their military industrial complex, and they want to create a society, in that part of the world that is dependent on continuous warfare. Okay, so I think that that's one of the goals of the U.S. military industrial complex. Okay, is to create a playmate on the other side of the world that's kind of like can keep up with them, right? Because what good is it having this gigantic industrial military complex here in the United States if you don't have somebody that you can actually play with on an equal competitive level? So I think that they're part of the plan here is to develop or further develop a military industrial complex in Russia and get a large part of the Russian society and the Russian economy dependent on that, so that the Russians are also, so that Russia ultimately ends up being dependent economically on continuous warfare. Okay, so that's, I mean, I think that's part of the long-term strategy of the U.S. industrial complex. They got like a winning formula here. They want to like replicate it, throughout the world, so that they can have these continuous, this continuous non-ending war feeding their business. Okay. So the other thing that's happening, they're splitting people, right? They're putting people into different camps, into different sides. Like to me, like prior to this war in Russia, Ukraine, it's like most people here in the United States, like Ukraine and Russians were kind of like the same thing. Okay, like they couldn't tell the difference. Like, well, the difference between a Ukrainian and a Russian, they were both like ex-Soviet. So, and I think a lot of the Soviets, I'm sorry, a lot of the Russian people and a lot of the Ukrainians. And now I believe that the Ukrainians did consider themselves separate from the Russians. However, I don't think that they consider themselves that separate. Okay, I don't think that the Ukrainians looked at the Russian people necessarily as an enemy. Okay, and I think that the United States did everything that they could to promote that for the purpose of cultivating this war. Okay, so here's one of the things. If you go back to like the late 1980s, early 1990s, late 1980s, the terms of the reunification of East and West Germany, right? The deal that the United States made with the Soviets was that the Soviets would allow Germany to reunify as long as NATO did not expand. Okay, so that was the deal. Okay, so as soon as Germany was reunified, the United States or NATO basically started growing. They started, pulling in a lot of those, some of those ex-Soviet breakaway states, and they did exactly the thing that they said that they wouldn't do. So NATO's absolutely in the wrong. Okay, they said that they would not expand, and they have expanded. Okay. Now the justification that they will say is that, hey, the deal was with the Soviets. It wasn't with the current Russian government. Okay, so that's the bullshit that NATO says. Okay, so that's complete bullshit. Okay, so in an effort to promote continuous, endless war, right? I believe that this guy Zelensky was basically installed, right, through, and back when it happened. This is not what came to mind. I never thought of it. But after seeing they fixed an election here in the United States, why wouldn't they fix an election over there? Okay, so they fixed this election in Ukraine to install this guy Zelensky, all right, who they knew would do everything that he could to provoke the Russians into a war. Okay, so I think that this whole thing was fixed. Zelensky was pretty much installed with this intention that this was his goal, to provoke the Russians into a war, and that's where we are right now. Okay, so that's where it is now. What's going on in Israel? I mean, slightly different story, but the same idea. Okay, I'm pretty sure that there was intelligence out there that this October 7th attack was going to happen. It took a long time to plan it. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that there was that, because remember, at this point, the NSA has everybody bugged. Okay, everybody. They're watching my videos. They got everybody bugged. Okay, you can't say, text, do anything anywhere in the world. Okay, without the NSA hearing about it. Okay, so anything that's like done on a wide scale like that, there's intelligence out there. People know about it. So they allowed this October 7th attack to happen for the same reason, hey, to basically promote war business. Okay, so the worst thing in the world for people that are in any way involved with the military is peace. Okay, there's no money in peace. Okay, for military people, money is in continuous, endless war. Okay, not in victory, in just continuous, endless war. Okay, so that is my update. Okay, so I haven't talked about this in a while, but I thought it'd be a good time to do a video on this subject. So drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you all soon.